need to adjust volume. This is frustrating. Okay, there we go. Got some background noise, so keep it down a bit. Make sure we're loud enough. It's gonna be a long fucking night, folks. Not gonna lie. Morning, whatever it is, yeah. Morning now. May the 2nd. Alright. So I think we do view. Alright. So I'm not going to waste too much time. I'm going to review this video. It's Andrew Wilson. Now the title here, he says, Andrew explains how religion can help fix society. This guy, Andrew Wilson, he's a Christian nationalist. He does debates and different. Anyway, he's all around the sphere here. This guy is fucking dangerous. Extremely dangerous. You want to talk about the enemy of a secular society, its ideology like this, and the way he presents his arguments. He's very well spoken, and if you know, like, he got Matt Dillahunty to rage quit their debate before it even began. So, in short, this man is a fucking shark. And I respect his skill, but I also think he's got some very dangerous ideas. So, I want to pay attention to the meta in what he's saying here. Notice the title of this clip, Andrew explains how religion can help fix society, right? But in this conversation, this is promiscuity is out of control. And there's... he states very explicitly in here what his agenda is. And to me, I think it's pretty fucking terrifying. Morning, Daniel, Barry Sports Highlights. Good to see you. So if you're at all worried about real Christian nationalism in the U.S., this is something to be paying attention to. If Andrew were to ever actually get into political office, which I think he might have a chance in certain places, it could be a very, very dangerous thing. So
you almost get punished for being that nice guy and being extremely virtuous and nice to these girls because they don't reward that anymore. Like, chivalry is dead, and I genuinely think modern day women killed it. So it's like, though I think that's optimal and the best way to go about it, I just don't think it's practical or pragmatic in today's day and age, is my only issue.
Well, I mean, the problem is there's a lot of truth in what you say.
Yeah.
And so, I'm a firm believer in accepting what is objective reality. It is objective reality that promiscuity inside of Western nations is now out of control, to the point where reining it back in seems like almost a fool's errand. But I also think that if we can provide...
Now, when these guys talk about promiscuity, right, they're talking about the promiscuity of females, right? They're not talking about male promiscuity, right? This is not an issue for these males. They're talking about women specifically. And the reason for this is, for these people who have this patriarchal kind of vision of society, right? Especially, many religious people, in their view, right, women are the property of men. Women need to be controlled and protected by men. And that's a key right there. You say, well, women need men to protect them from who? From other men, right? And and so this is even like a fairly common argument in some secular circles. I've had it made here. Well, don't you feel the need to protect women? Aren't women weaker than you? Well, I mean, as a general rule, most women aren't as physically strong, right? But I think it misses the point here. What these men need is to control women's sexuality, right? It's inherent in their ideology, in their religion, and they don't know another way, right, to deal with the reality of the fact that women can control their own sexuality, and they're fully capable of making these decisions without males directing them, right? This doesn't compute because it goes against everything that they're taught in their religions.
Any pushback to move it the right direction, we should.
Yeah. I mean, and now I'm actually like, brainstorming here how we would do that. The only way we would do it is, you would have to make a religious state to do it because, quite frankly,
at least give a religious option, right? And let the religious govern it as synergy. So the nations of old had a synergistic relationship.
Yeah.
It was not that the state was run by the church, just that the state worked with the church.
Yeah.
Why should the state govern marriage?
So you're not a fan of separation of church and state?
Well, not a separation. I think, though, that we should not necessarily live in a state which is controlled by the church, but has a synergistic relationship.
Okay.
Your population needs to have some moral foundation, right? You can't have people...
So, and what he's calling a synergistic relationship here, right? He's referring to he is referring to a state that is in line with the moral majority. David, good morning, Abe. Oop, my bad. I was reading Daniel's comment above David there. Good to see you as well, David. Sorry. Okay, so when he calls this, he says, "Oh, well, it was a synergistic relationship," as if we didn't have. And this is what I think is important. He's glossing over the fact that we have things like in history these events happen, right? We had the Inquisitions and the Crusades, like all of these state sanctioned, right? Because they were in this synergistic relationship with the state, right? And this is the type of society that Andrew wants to return to. This is really what he means to say. You could say, oh, well, we still have a separation of church and state, but at the end of the day, the state's going to follow church law. Well, that's not really a separation of church and state. That's not what we mean by that.
Even patriotism itself used to be a big deal in the United States, right?
Yeah.
That was a unifying force. So there's all kinds of propaganda towards patriotism, right? It was everywhere.
Yeah.
There was American flags, and the patriotic messaging was everywhere. And it's a subtle form of brainwashing, which unifies people through an ideology.
Yeah.
Religion does the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and open admission, religion does the same thing.
if you can push any kind of synergy with the church, you don't have to make the.
But how would we get the young people to do that? Because my thing is, so I see your perspective and I see your vision. I agree with you that religion absolutely curbs a lot of this bullshit. The problem is, how are you going to get the young people to accept it? Like, how are you going to get the young people to be?
Now, right here, this is the part I'm talking about.
Same way that the leftists did it.
Okay.
Through moving through institutions as quickly as we possibly can and adjusting our propaganda at the national level. The propaganda I want to see at the national...
Moving through institutions as quickly as we possibly can and adjusting propaganda at the national level, right? So push the church, push the religious ideology within educational institutions, because that's what the left did. This is his tactic. He fails to acknowledge that the way that we got where we are politically is by the religious right being in control as long as they have been, right? This is why you have this extreme leftism pushback. It is because the religious fundamentalists have been in power for so long, right? And so now he thinks by going to universities and institutions and pushing their religious propaganda, they're somehow going to counterbalance whatever progress has been made on the left. And this is his answer, and he's explicitly stated it here.
Level sounds like this: get married young, have 1 million children because we're going to tax exempt you from life. For life. You'll be tax exempt for life. 3 kids.
Right? Tax exempt for life. Get married young, have a bunch of kids, and we're going to give you tax exemption for life. That is not separation of church and state, sir. That is preferable treatment for whom? For presumably, white Christian folks, right? Because I'm sure you don't want to promote this for people of color, right? I mean, maybe, as long as they're Christian. I don't know. Andrew's, I don't know about Andrew's racial or I know he has a hardline stance on immigration, right? So I don't want to call him a racist, but yeah.
Right? We're going to make it really hard for you to get a divorce because the state's getting out of it. You can only get married through your church. The state.
They make it, and I almost agree with this. I almost agree with him on this point. Get the state out of marriage. Do it through your church. But if you take the state out of marriage, then where do you get this tax exempt status from? Like this incentivization from the state to go to your church and get married, right? That's clear conflict of interest. That's the two entities being in cahoots with one another for a particular goal, which is what? Population, to repopulate your or continue to populate your Christian community, right?
It's not even going to offer a marriage certificate. We don't need to.
Of this institution of marriage sanctioned by the church, in which we want to produce more believers, more people who are aligned with our values.
Anymore, because our job is to push towards the health and welfare of the United States, and this is no longer healthy.
Oh, but this is a health and welfare issue, right? We're going to produce healthier people by this practice. So we're going to incentivize, large nuclear families, right? I guess that would be the appropriate term, by giving them tax-exempt status. And this will improve the overall health and welfare of the nation.
For the United States to have marriage through the state. It has become so bad that people who enter it, your likelihood of exiting clean is almost 0%, right?
Yeah.
So
impossible.
You can do the same thing. You can have national rhetoric, national brainwashing campaigns, right? Just the other direction.
Well, that's what you've had. And this is the point, right? He's saying, oh, well, I don't know if he said it now or he's about to say it, but at some point he says, like, oh, for the last 30 years, like, and I don't know if he means like up until the 2000s as like a popular conservative talking point. They'll be like, oh, well, since affirmative action, or they'll draw back to, oh, well, since Social Security. They'll find some point in which, Democrats were in control and, oh, well, look at this thing that didn't work out the way we planned it. But in reality, these are like bipartisan bills, right? They got passed unanimously. And then they're like, but the Democrat agenda is this, and I'll use that as my like landmark for what the Dems did wrong back then, and but he refers to it as a brainwashing campaign, and that's what he's talking about, like wokeness and shit like that. And so his counter to that, is to brainwash them with Christian ideology. Like, let's do that. But neglecting the fact that that was what was being done before. This is exactly what that whole progressive pushback has been against, was this hardline right-wing Christian ideology. This is how we got to the point of conflict in the first place. Y'all were in control for most of the nation's history.
Now, brainwashing has a negative connotation.
So how are you
going
to override? And this is just like I genuinely want to get your opinion on this. How do we override the Cardi B's, the Sexy Reds, the the ridiculous music, the ridiculous social media addiction that a lot of young people have, the TikTok twerking, the OnlyFans culture that we have, the
Jesus. No, yeah. So, how do we override all of these? Religion will fix society. I guess.
sex workers. I would argue nowadays, like young women are more inspired by sex workers than anything else, right? Like if you ask a young,
It's hard sometimes, being in my position. Sometimes I agree with some of these statements. I'm like, okay, this is a fucking problem. What's up, Cher? Good to see you. Yeah, these guys are crazy. But I mean, it's like the thought of these two males sitting here on panel debating this demonstrates exactly how society got to the point that it's at. It's like it's a fucking meme of itself, right? You're the reason that feminists don't like men.
attractive girl. Who's your role model? We've done it on the podcast a bunch of times. Who did I say? Kim K.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy. Like that's what they
I've heard
aspire to
that,
be like
and
now.
it's like it's
Yeah.
sickening to listen to.
So it's like how are we going to override
Here's how you do it.
all the degenerate propaganda that's been put out there?
Muslims are fantastic at this,
Yeah.
and Christians are not. Muslims engage. What I've noticed about Muslims is they engage. They engage in ideology, man. They engage in political prescriptions, and they're in your face about it. Christians have become soft and too.
See, now he's getting scary again. Now he's getting scary again. And this is where I'm like, okay, he's like, so he wants Christians to be more like Muslims, right? Which at best is scary, and at worst is really, really fucking dangerous, right? Like, Christians need to be more like, so you want to go back to like, again, the days of the Crusades, the Inquisition, put it in their face, right? Torture them if they don't believe. Right, that's where this line of reasoning goes. You take it ad absurdum. That's what he's saying. He's like, we need to make it so that they do not, feel they have a fucking option. Right? Put it in their face. Be loud. Be scary. Do all of that. It's like y'all have been there. That's actually how Christianity grew. You're very, very intimidating, right? And I love this. So he's like, oh, well, we need to be more like the Muslims. That's amazing coming from a Christian. I think it's just it's absurd, right?
Nice.
Crazy.
We have adopted Christianity to be a be nice religion, and it never was a be nice religion.
It's past.
Well, at least he's honest, right? At least he's honest. Because everybody's like, oh, Christianity's all about love and peace, and that's what the Muslims say. Well, no, they're not all about love and peace. These religions are violent, right?
It's supposed to be a get-in-your-face religion. It's supposed to be a no, you're wrong. You fucking skank, you're wrong, and you're a liar, and you're destroying the very fabric of society. But we don't see that.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Tell them they're wrong. Get in their face. What's the next step? If they're not hearing you, what do you do after that? You brutalize them or you kill them.
Engagement from Christians anymore because it's been so.
Whatever you got to do. If you torture them to death, they weren't sufficiently holy. That's how Christians thought. They've done it before and they'll do it again.
Subverted by women saying, no, be nice.
Yeah.
What I would like to see is instead of theological debates going on all over the place between Christian versus Christian, and I'd like to see more Christians actually move into the political space like I have. You even see guys like Fuentes did this.
See? He's talking about moving into the political space, and it's not like there's a shortage of Christians in the fucking political space, right? They still dominate by and large. At least they claim to be Christian. You may say they're not real Christians, but that's what they claim. So I'm going to take them at their word. And, those are the people dominating political spaces. So when you're saying moving back into the political space, when did they ever move away from it, Andrew?
They move into the political space and they fight that way. They push back using Christianity ideologically through politics. And that's become very popular. Suddenly.
Yeah, that's generally what we do if we're not going to force people to submit to our ideology. But I think you would find that preferable if you could find a way to make the state enforce your ideology, right? That implies violence or threat of violence. You would be for that. That's what I believe about this one. Throw them to the lions. Throw who?
It starts picking up steam. You start hearing about things like Christian nationalism. You start hearing about Christian hierarchies and all these different ideas, not because we're having obscure theological debates, but because we're getting in your face politically. We're saying, no, Christians aren't passive. No, Christians aren't sissies. No, Christians aren't supposed to just sit there while secularists rule us. That is
which is a delusion that you are being ruled by secularists. You guys still hold the majority of the power. We're always trying to push back and peel back the layers of that, right? Like, this abortion debate. What is it? The only people, realistically, or the majority of people who are against abortion are their argument is based in religious ideology, right? That's those people. The people who are anti-trans, their argument against is religious ideology, the vast majority, right? And so rather than, maybe allow people to, be themselves in society, no, we're going to put our foot down. We're going to tell you we're not sissies. We're not going to take it, and you need to live our way or hit the highway. That's the meta message here, right? You need to live like a Christian or get lost.
Huge misinterpretation that people have that secularists are somehow better off having power than the religious. That's insane.
Secularists just want equality. We're supposed to live in a secular society. There is supposed to be a separation of church and state, although it's not necessarily explicitly stated in the Constitution. Different people can have differing interpretations of what that means. And so we need to go back and rewrite the fucking document to make it very, very clear to everybody exactly what we're talking about. Because otherwise we can keep, having this quibble back and forth, and, it doesn't make a lick of difference because the document is vague.
Secularists are not good at wielding power. They have no moral grounding from which to wield it. So,
well, that's absolutely ridiculous. We can have any number of moral grounding. It just doesn't have to be based biblically, right? If it's not based biblically, then you have a problem with it, right? And you're going to argue with it. But we can argue with biblical morals just as well, like we do all the time.
if we really want to see...
Because you don't acknowledge those arguments.
...change, instead of trying to get into Christian apologetics in order to have theological debates and theological discussions, get into Christian politics and go get in their face. And that, I think, will have more of a result in society than people can imagine. Is it going to happen overnight?
There you go. Get in their face, because you can't just have a reasonable discussion like you're having now. You need to get in their face. Like, for example, what he did to Dillahunty, right? It's dishonest. It's dishonest argumentation. Like, the fact that Dillahunty rage quit, yeah, it makes him look bad. It makes him look weak. But at the end of the day, Andrew was trolling him, and he got the reaction he wanted, right? He didn't argue the position that he was actually there to argue. Instead, he attacked Dillahunty's partner, who was not there to defend themselves, and their lifestyle choices, rather than actually going after any ideological position. Right? It was an ad hominem attack against a third party who wasn't even there. Right? And that was his tactic. And that was why Dillahunty got mad and left. And understandably so.
Right? No. Is it going to be cross-generational? Yeah. But I'd rather see people push that direction.
Okay. And you had mentioned earlier that you don't foresee this happening like in our generation. When do you foresee this like happening? Because
it took the left about 3 generations to completely infiltrate all of our institutions. It's going to take us about 3 generations to infiltrate them ourselves. We have to get involved.
So he said 3 generations. So take that as what, 60 years or something, I guess.
And again, in culture, we have to be confrontational. And
we're talking 60 to 100 years then.
Probably 60 years.
Yeah.
But that's a blink of the eye.
Yeah.
It's a blink of the eye. You know what I mean? And it's like, maybe we can't say...
Yeah, they're always like, there's some, it was the 60s. Right. Just put this number on it. No. Christian nationalists have had control the majority of the time. Anytime you see a big pushback from the left, like, that's always groundbreaking. And all he wants to do is roll back the clock to the way things were. This is like a Make America Great Again argument from this Christian perspective.
Give them all, right? But we can at least start the process. And it's like, I would rather start the process and start moving that direction and be realistic with the outcome, right? The most beautiful churches in the world took 300, 400, 500 years, 1,000 years to build. They were cross-generational projects.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not saying that we can save men right now. That would be absurd. What I am saying, though, is that men can save themselves by working towards that goal.
Men can save
Before
themselves.
I spoke at Drew University in 2022.
All right, and I'm not even going to get into this Council of Trent video at this point. It's why I don't care if I'm homophobic. That'll probably be the next one. About 10 minutes. So that was that. The fucking Andrew Wilson. This guy is a pretty scary dude. Like, as far as what he really preaches and the way he argues, I mean, he's good. He's intelligent. He's knowledgeable. He's not a fucking dumbass. And getting in their face with their perception of morality is what Karens do, right? Exactly. So we'll see more from that guy. He really gets under my skin a lot of the time. All right, I'll probably do an announcement in a little bit here. I did get my StreamYard account paid up, so we have unlimited streaming hours. Yay, I did it. More on that later. All right, hope everybody's having a great morning so far. It's Thursday. And it's getting warm out. Summer's coming. All right, be well, stay trusty, see you soon.